we're seeing incremental changes. And tomorrow we're going to do, there's a workshop we're holding, and I'm going to try and get people to start thinking about some of the disruptive changes that we can look forward to in terms of learning and vocational education and training in the next 15 years. So disruptive technologies change the way we do things dramatically. And there's a lot of evidence to show that big organisations don't like disruptive change. Organisations like universities, colleges, are very good at making incremental improvements. They're very efficient, they're very effective. They may not be the right place to implement disruptive technology changes. And here we've got 12 disruptive technologies which are the global trends at the moment, as identified by McKinsey Global Institute. And I'm not going to read the list, but you can see, that they're in the areas you would expect them to be, but the 4 that I find are most interesting are the ones at the bottom. Mobile internet, what's called Internet of Things, which is a whole collection of internet applications and uses, the cloud, and automation of knowledge work. These are 4 massive trends, and they are going to make a huge impact on the vocational education training sector. I think what's missing from here, and who am I to argue with McKinsey, but the 13th one is social. That is the social disruptive technology, which I think is the glue that will make a lot of these disruptive technologies move forward. And those 4 are directly relevant to the vocational education and training market. Now I'm going to introduce you to a disruptive learner, and I call her a disruptive social learner because she does things differently to how I do things. There's nothing special about Joanna, other than that she is my daughter and she's here blushing in the front. But she's a disruptive social learner. What she actually does as a living, I can't begin to understand how this can be considered a living. She stays at home most days, she works in her pyjamas, she works on her sofa, and she does 20 to 30 hours a week. And she's busy, but she's got a lifestyle that enables her to do lots of other things that she really, really wants to do. And what she does is she's an advanced digital assistant. She manages digital projects for her clients, who she very, very rarely meets. Most of them are in the States. And she does all sorts of fantastic things with them that I'm now starting to learn from. Now let's think about the disruptive learner, the social learner. Her office is in the park, and we've talked about this earlier, Kenneth made mention of this, and I'm not sure if it was last summer or the year before, she bought a Ford Galaxy car, ripped out all the seats, converted it into a bedroom, and went on holiday touring Europe for a couple of months while she carried on working. Because what she did was she worked in McDonald's, Starbucks, anywhere she could get Wi-Fi. So she didn't miss any business, any new clients, any deadlines. She was able to work in a way that she wanted to work. So I got interested in this because there's a growing number of people that she now knows and she's been interviewing to find out, well, what's your psychology? What makes you tick? How does this work? And this is where I first came across this strange term, solopreneur. And these are all disruptive social learners. Now, the first thing I would say, it's a wrong term to call them solo, because not one of the solo entrepreneurs that I know of works on their own. They actually work in online communities, and they're very, very close communities where there's lots of information exchange and sharing taking place on a minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour basis. They use social media in ways that I didn't even realise social media could operate and could work. So they're not talking about programmed learning. When they have a need, they tap into their social network. Their learning is what they need to know when they need to know it, and they're looking for solutions to drive productivity and performance. Now that's different from a traditional educational model where we're working towards some examination and some qualification. Now, is this just a small-scale thing? Is it, or is it a bit part of a bigger movement? Now, I asked the question earlier today about the United States. Currently, there's nearly 18 million socialpreneurs in the US, with another 13 million, this figure's out of date now, that are part-time. Now, when they talk about solopreneurs, that's excluding those smaller businesses that actually are now employing 2, 3, 4, 5 people. The solopreneur is literally the one person in that business. When I come to look at the research and the progression of this in a European context, I saw it was a global map, and it was like a heat map showing where the monies are being generated by solopreneurs. As you would imagine, the States is very high. Australia and New Zealand are actually quite high. The UK was lukewarm, it was like a grey colour, and France just started to register. But most of Europe really didn't register on this heat map as a major source of revenue being generated by solopreneurs. So that tells me that in Europe we may need to start thinking about how we can start to explore what these people are doing, because I think they've got some methods, technologies and applications that we could quite easily start to learn from, modify and adapt if necessary, but move that into mainstream micro and smaller businesses and use some of those techniques. So the big issue, or the big question for me today was, is vocational education and training as we know it fit for today? Now, I know what I think. I think we've got a lot of learning to do, but my thoughts are that maybe there's some lessons we can learn from the people that are actually the disruptive social learners that we can capture and then start to share with other entrepreneurs. There's going to be a blog about this, which you might want to follow up. But the big thing I want to say today is I've been inspired by this LEXSHA project and this concept of learning from other people, then exploring issues and then sharing. And as a consequence of that, I've spent the last 2 months talking to lots of different organisations, people like Joanna, Siobhan, that are running their own businesses, and we're putting together an Erasmus Plus project application specifically for European socialpreneurs. And what we're going to do there is to try and identify some of the best practices that solo entrepreneurs use in the way that they learn and develop their business. And what I suspect we're going to find is the learning that they engage in has a very, very short shelf life. I think what they learn today is out of date in 3 months' time. And that's where I think this whole journey comes back to the lifelong learning programme and the Leonardo and the Erasmus programme, that actually we've got to start asking some really tough questions within vocational education and training sectors with policymakers and stakeholders about how can we bring our vocational learning processes in line with the way that the learning is going to develop in the future. So if you are interested, I'm interested in your feedback about what you think about solopreneurs. If there's anybody that really would like to be involved in this project, it's very early stages, but we'll be working on that development over the next 3 months. So thank you very much for listening. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them, but I'm very aware of the time as well. So thank you. I'm fine. Okay.
Merci pour les...
Thank you very much for this invitation to the different participants during your talk. It really was fascinating. And I think it does show us something, and that is that in terms of the evolutions you were raising in terms of social learners, is to see to what extent we must constantly be going, iterations. It's constantly renewal, a constant process of changing, which is accelerating and ongoing. And as we can see during the debates this morning as well, accepting change, accepting